Hi, I'm Bill Bradley. Join me for a recent excerpt of American Voices. In 1961, Calvin Tyler enrolled in college. It was exciting. He was the first person in his family to go to college, went to Morgan State University, a historically black college. But 2 years in, he had to drop out of college because he couldn't afford the tuition. Instead, he took a job as a driver with UPS, and he worked his way up. He eventually became Senior Vice President of Operations, and now 58 years later, he and his wife, Tina, created a scholarship at the same college and donated $20 million so that other kids who are struggling financially will have a chance. Calvin Tyler, it's so great to have you here on American Voices. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Senator Bradley. Glad to be here.
So tell me that moment 58 years ago when you realized that you'd have to drop out of school. Must have been very difficult.
It was difficult. It was the culmination of struggling, trying to work several jobs and go to school at the same time. It was a real struggle. So,
was anyone in your life there to help you keep the faith?
Well, not really. I was from a low-income family, and neither of my parents ever attended college, so we didn't talk a lot about college, and they couldn't afford to pay my tuition. So if I was going to go to school, it would be something I would have to pay for myself, work and go to school at the same time. And I gave it a shot. I tried as hard as I could, but it just became a little too tough.
So what kind of jobs were you doing?
Well, several jobs. I worked for the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad on their graveyard shift. I worked at Hutzler's department store, parking cars at night, worked for a jewelry store for a little bit. It was just every job I could find while I was trying to also get an education.
Well, then you married your high school sweetheart.
Yes. And her name is Tina. Actually, her full name is Ernestine. We met in high school at a sock hop.
I remember what it was.
Yeah, it was a sock hop at a YWCA that I first met my wife, Tina.
And how did you meet her? Did somebody introduce you, or did you see her across the room? Or
well, Bill, a sock hop in those days were held in gymnasiums mainly. All the boys would be lined up on one side of the gymnasium and all the girls on the other. And when a certain song was played, the boys had to get up enough nerve to walk all the way across the other side and ask a lady to dance. And that was terrifying.
But you did it, and you asked Tina to dance.
Yes, I did, and she said yes. And I've never regretted it since.
Yeah, what a wonderful love story.
Yeah, this year we'll celebrate in June our 60th wedding anniversary.
Oh, that is a beautiful, beautiful story.
Thank you.
So then you were married now, and you took a job as a driver for UPS. What was that like for you?
Well, even though I stopped college, UPS came to Baltimore as a new company in 1964, and they took out a full-page ad in the Baltimore Sun. But the thing that stuck out most to me was that they said they promoted from within. And I thought I would try to get a job there and see if I couldn't get into management.
And that's what you did. So what qualities do you think that you had that made you so successful in going up that ladder?
Well, number one, and I credit my parents with this, I had an extreme work ethic. They taught me that I should work hard at anything I was doing in life, whether it was school or a job. Always give your best, work very hard. And that's something that I took to UPS. I worked very hard as a driver, did a very good job. And within a couple of years, I was promoted into management.
And then you worked your way on up to be the Senior Vice President for Operations.
That took taking a lot of challenging assignments all over the U.S. Tina and I moved 9 times.
Give me an example of a couple.
Well, we left our hometown in Baltimore and moved to Houston. I was a division manager in Houston, running the city of Houston at age 26. Then we went to Omaha, Nebraska, and I was running the entire state of Nebraska at age 29. And from there, we went to New Jersey. That's when my son was your paper boy.
Yeah, that's a real coincidence, isn't it?
Yeah,
he did a good job. He was a hard worker, just like his father.
Well, he still tells me today that he has your autograph, so.
Yeah, well, that's great. So, $20 million is a lot of money. You must have been saving a lot as you moved along through life.
Yeah, my wife and I have never been big spenders. We don't have a lot of extravagant things. So we did save a lot. And, most of my savings were in stock in UPS. And during my 34 years at UPS grew from a relatively small company to an international Fortune 50 company.
Right.
During those 34 years. The stock in UPS grew considerably over my career. And I should mention that, UPS, for their management people back then, would include about 15 to 20% of your compensation would be in stock in the company. And I'm one of the few in UPS who, for the entire 34 years, never sold a single share.
Oh, really? But now I understand how you got to 20 million.
That helps.
So when did you and your wife, Tina, decide to give back and create this scholarship?
Well, almost. I retired in 1998. It was almost immediately after that we sat down and started thinking about ways we could give back. We felt that we were financially pretty secure. We decided that the thing that we would like to do most is to help young men and women, particularly in the inner city of Baltimore, where we were from, to have a chance to get an education and have that chance even though they may not be able financially to do it, or their families may not be able to help them financially. So I met with the president of Morgan State, Dr. Earl Richardson, and talked about that. I took him to dinner in Atlanta. We were living in Atlanta then. And during dinner, he talked about the fact that Morgan's mission was to help underserved kids get an education, and something like 80 and 90% of the students at Morgan needed some type of financial assistance. It sort of was a win-win. We wanted to help kids in our hometown, and Morgan's mission was to help the type of kids we were trying to reach. So
it sounds great. I understand that you've been to some of the graduations. How did that feel?
Oh, I can't explain the deep feeling that you have when you see one of our Tyler scholars walk across the stage, get their degree. Usually their parents and relatives are nearby, and you can see the joy in their faces. To Tina and I, it almost feels like it's one of our children walking across the stage. So,
right.
Nothing like it.
Morgan State University is the largest historically black college and university in Maryland, and is among a handful of HBCUs nationally to be classified as a doctoral research university by the Carnegie Classification of Institutions of Higher Education. Recently,
tell us about some of the kids who've received the help and what they've majored in and what their lives are like now.
Well, I could tell you about Byron Selby. Byron was a young kid who was interested in going to college. He would be the first in his family to go to college. He had a mother who was a drug addict, and he had an older brother who he looked up to who was in jail in Baltimore for murder. And he was a fine young man who really wanted to break the cycle. And he was one of the first to receive a full tuition scholarship from our endowment fund. He went on to not only graduate, but he also became the star quarterback of Morgan's football team.
Mm-hmm.
He always wanted to work in law enforcement. And after graduating from Morgan, he got a job with the Secret Service in Washington, D.C. And he's served on President Obama's Secret Service detail in the White House. He's married with 2 young kids. We stay in touch with him, and he's just an example of the type of transformation that can be made because of these types of scholarships.
How many Tyler Scholars are there every year?
Well, we've set it up so that, and I think there's close to 300 scholars that we've had so far, and 80 of them are full tuition scholarships. We try to set it up so that at least 20 scholarships are awarded each year, and we like at least half of them to be full tuition scholarships.
That's terrific. What do you think about the problems that kids have with student loans today, and what do you think we can do about it?
I've talked to the president of Morgan, and one of the reasons why we expanded our gift to $20 million is because I want to increase the number of full tuition scholarships so that we can have as many students as possible graduate debt-free. It's a serious problem for a young person to graduate with a degree and have $80,000 to $100,000 to $150,000 in debt. They're basically starting from behind. And it's difficult, I don't care what profession you're in, to make up and catch up with that type of debt hanging over your head.
Yeah, no question about that. No, we got to wipe away some of it to give people a chance to be able to live without the debt that's burdening them and preventing their lives from taking the full shape that their abilities would allow to do.
Yes. What Tina and I are doing is a small part. You know, the government, federal government, state governments, local governments can do a lot more. No one person can do everything that needs to be done, but every person can do something. And this is our something.
Yeah, but it's more than just something, I'll tell you that. So let me ask you, we were talking about how your son, when you lived in New Jersey, delivered our paper and how hard he worked. I mean, it makes me curious about how you've raised your children. It sounds like it was important for them to have a job at a young age. And how'd you go about teaching them about money and work?
Well, most of it was by example. We stayed out of debt ourselves and we saved money at all times. And I try to pass that on to my sons. And Kevin's doing a good job right now. He's an accountant by trade. And because he saved and put his money away, he's getting very close to retirement. So he'll be taking over.
Yeah.
And I did try to teach both of them that ownership was more important than income, and especially in our society. You need to own something to really progress in life. And I think they both took that to heart.
That's great. I'm sure they're proud of you too.
I hope so.
So what was the biggest risk that you took in your life?
I think that probably the biggest risk is that Tina and I were able to move out of our comfort zone and to take on new challenges. Just moving from your hometown, your family, all the people you knew, that's a tough first step. And,
right.
And we did that not only the first time going to Houston, but 8 other times during my career. And I think that's the biggest risk, is moving and having new friends, new neighbors, new bosses. Everything new every few years is a big risk.
My father always used to say, as you move through life, there's one thing that's important: learn how to adapt.
That's, and I try to tell people, take some chances, move out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. So when that occurred, what was it that pushed you forward?
It's funny, people ask me about becoming a senior vice president of operations, but I can honestly say in 34 years with UPS, I never looked ahead to the next job. I always worked as hard as I could and gave as much as I could to the job I had. And there were other people who felt that I could take on more responsibility. That wasn't my call.
Yeah, well, that's the old story, You're only as good as your last game.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, so you got to work at it every day. The future takes care of itself. I mean,
it does.
In my case, if I'm in high school, what do I want to do? I don't want to be a pro basketball player. I want to win the state championship, or in college, the college championship. Life moves on and things happen because you focus so clearly on the goal at hand.
That's an important part of it. And I've told several people that I can honestly say I never looked ahead to the next job.
So let me ask you, Calvin, if you could talk to that young Calvin who 58 years ago had to drop out of college, what would you tell him?
Well, I would. That's a tough question. Life is not a one-way path upward. Life is full of ups and downs. You know, the most important thing is to continue to work hard, continue to try to improve. There are going to be setbacks. When you get knocked down in life, it's not a sin to get knocked down. It is a sin not to get back up. So
right.
Perseverance, I guess, is what I'm trying to get to. If you persevere and really give it your best, in the long run, I think you'll succeed.
There got to be a couple of individuals or a couple of stories that were memorable. Can you share one or two with us?
Well, one I can remember, the founder of UPS, Jim Casey, said that he didn't want hired hands, is what he called. He wanted management people who had a stake in the business. In 1975, I went to the UPS Management Conference. I was the only person of color there out of several hundred people. But we had just completed expanding to all 48 states. We spent 4 days celebrating the fact that our service now was everywhere in the U.S. And I had the honor of introducing the founder, Jim Casey, as our closing speaker. I remember to this day him saying that it's great that you fellows, as he called us, you fellows have expanded the business and now cover all 48 states in the U.S. But he said that he thought it was his duty to remind us that we were still only servicing 4% of the world's population. That to me was what UPS was all about. You know, it was the constant pursuit of excellence. No matter how well you were doing today, you were always looking to do better tomorrow. And it was a constant pursuit of excellence.
That's a good message for all of us.
Yeah. You know, there's nothing wrong with pursuing excellence or perfection, if you want to call it that. You might not get there, but the pursuit of it is worth it.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, Calvin. Thanks for everything you've done for the kids and for your inspiring career and family. You're one of the great Americans.
Oh, thank you, Senator. I appreciate that.
I've been speaking with Calvin Tyler. To find out more, visit us on our Facebook page. It's American Voices with Senator Bill Bradley. Thank you so much for taking the time, Calvin.
Thank you, Senator.
Say hello to your son.
I will.
Thank you for listening to American Voices here on my YouTube channel. For more interviews celebrating the goodness and creativity of the American people, click the subscribe button below.